welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero in the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us.
Hello and welcome to the first ever Hollie's Hotspurs live of the 24-25 season. And to dissect kind of our thoughts and feelings going into this season, I am joined by three fabulous guests. So first of all, I am joined by Luke from the Park Lane podcast. Luke, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. To be fair, I did tweet yesterday and said, I'm excited to be on the first one of the season. And then I thought, actually, was there one last week? Because I'm not paying any attention, obviously. And I was quick to delete it. And then I thought, no, but turns out it is. So I'm absolutely honoured to be here for the first one.
Joined as well by Mitch. Mitch, how are you?
Oh, I don't know if it's just me, but I've lost sound.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Sorry.
There we go. As you can tell, I'm having technical issues as per usual. But how are you, Mitch?
I'm very well, thank you. Apart from the blatantly obvious hot. In my camera, I look red as like a cherry, so I don't know if I'm looking like that to everyone else, but it is what it is. I'm sure everyone's hot, but no, I'm excited to talk about Tottenham. Week to go till the season starts for us, so yeah, lots to get through as you've mentioned, and yeah, looking forward to discussing it with a very good panel as well.
No, definitely, it's going to be a good one. And also joined by Billie T. Billie, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, very good. Fucking really hot as well, which is quite good because I think the sweat will disguise the tears of the announcement that's just happened about an hour ago. So I'm obviously very upset from Emerson Royale leaving. So yeah, but luckily you can't see my tears because it's so fucking hot.
I was not going to mention his name, but you said it now, Billie. But we'll move on swiftly. We won't stay on it. But we're going to talk, first of all, dive straight into it and kind of talk a bit about the preseason games. Now, Luke, I'll come to you first. Obviously, we played Bayern at the weekend. What did you kind of make of the way we played, obviously, with our last game kind of before the season starts?
I found it weird that we played them twice. Like, I obviously understand why, but it's just bizarre, like, planning from whoever plans our preseason fixtures to think, oh yeah, we'll play Bayern in a preseason game in halfway across the world, and then we've already got games scheduled, which has been scheduled for a long time as well. It's not the ideal two games to play before the season starts, really. Just not okay. It's just preseason, but you know what fans get like, tetchy, and you've seen Twitter meltdowns this weekend, and so look, I thought we played all right. To be fair. It's a bit of a shame, because of the Euros and stuff, that we haven't been able to see like a full team squad play at least 45 minutes, I would say, because even at the weekend he played with Ben Davies at centre back and others, and then brought on Van der Ven and Romero, etc. Later on, when then all the youngsters came on, it was a bit weird why he didn't just put them on at the start, which was quite our midfield and attack was pretty strong. So. Interesting, but you only take so much from pre-season, don't you? And look, our main striker, who we now have, hasn't even played. So classic Spurs, I think.
No, I think you're right. I think again, obviously, where it's that game right before the season, you're kind of thinking, was he going to like start strong just to kind of get the players kind of kicking? But I guess where they're in training all the time, I suppose they've kind of already covered that. But Mitch, obviously, the biggest. Okay, we're talking about concerns because I know obviously Twitter went through a bit of a meltdown. But you're a bit concerned in terms of how we're conceding set pieces once again, and the season hasn't even kicked off yet. Or do you think maybe it's just no, chill out a bit, you're all right?
I think it's a bit of an interesting one because when you play a team like Bayern Munich, they are going to test you more than more than most teams would in Europe. So in that sense, I think it's almost better to play those sorts of games because they will very quickly highlight the problems that you do have. So in a sense, it's good that we've had that issue now and in pre-season, and Ange can see that perhaps that it is still a bit of a problem conceding from set pieces, and hopefully it's something he worked on. I know he had that comment last season where he was like, he doesn't really feel like he needs to focus on set pieces and how to defend them and stuff. But I think there's a lot of value in doing that, and it will save us a lot of goals over the season. So yeah, whether Miles Jedinak's still in charge of sorting all of that out, or whether it's, whoever it may be, it definitely is an issue that needs to be addressed. And I don't think Ange will be unaware of that, whatever he may say to the media. I think he's one of the, he's a top coach. So, I don't think managers just sit there and go, yeah, that's just something I'm going to completely ignore because we concede a lot of goals from it. But yeah, it doesn't concern me right this second. I think if we get 5, 6, 7 games into the season and we've conceded like as many set piece goals, then that is where it starts to become a concern. But hopefully, now that we've got all of the players back that we need and that we'll be starting across most of those Premier League games, it will be a bit more sort of solid at the back, and we'll see less of that. But you know as well as I do that it's never that easy with Tottenham. I will say.
I was going to say, doing zonal marking and sitting in that pre-season friendly did my nut in. So hopefully you're right, Mitch. Hopefully Ange is kind of looking into that and he will kind of fix that. Billy, but I wanted to come to you because obviously there's a few players that have really surprised me in a good way in this pre-season. One of those is Decky. What have you kind of made of his kind of appearances in pre-season?
I think he's probably been our standout player of pre-season. If you discount the young players, definitely the best senior player of the pre-season without a doubt. And I think he looks quite good in the striker role, to be honest, which is not something where we've seen him before, really. I kind of thought towards the end of last season a lot that he doesn't really fit as an Ange winger. He's not really that kind of Ange ball winger. He's much better when he was playing number 10. But now we're seeing him play number 9. It actually looks pretty good. So yeah, I would definitely think he's been our standout player of the pre-season. What's he got? 3 goals, 3 assists, I think, something like that in 6 games. Yeah, I think he's been the star. It's going to be an interesting conversation because I wouldn't be surprised if Solanke comes straight in for Leicester, but it's definitely going to be a difficult one now because Kulesevski's been brilliant.
I think it's a great headache to have. We always say that competition for space kind of brings out these players. But Mitch, I'll come to you actually for this one because obviously we've spoken a little bit about Kulesevski and Billy said how he's not necessarily that kind of winger, so to speak, for Ange, but bringing him into that middle has kind of elevated his performance, so to speak.
Yeah, it has, and I think we saw it in shades last season when he was playing that James Maddison number 10 role. He definitely looks a lot more comfortable in a central role, and I think he himself admitted that when he's done interviews over the last 12 months or so. But I think the great thing about Decky is that he's more than happy to play wherever he's needed. Whether that be as that false 9, whether it be on one of the wings, or whether it be in that midfield. I think it's going to be a very important tool that Ange is probably going to have to utilise across the season because, unfortunately, the way football works, there are going to be setbacks for the squad. We're very likely going to have injuries in key positions at some points, as is the way of football at this level. And the great thing is Kulesevski will be an option to fill in most of those roles across the season. And, it's a bit of, I don't want to say that it's a bit of a shame that Solanke's coming because it hasn't, but Kulesevski's been arguably one of the most impressive players in pre-season this summer with how he's performed. He certainly looked one of the fittest and one of the sharpest on the pitch every time he has played. So, the fact that he's now backing that up with goals, which is what he struggled with a lot last season, barring that first perhaps 10 games where everybody was just on a bit of a different level. The fact that he's now knowing how to put the ball in the back of the net, it's a good sign. And I'll never sit here and say that players playing well and fighting and having that competition for every place is going to be a bad thing because the number of games that we're going to have coming our way with us being back in Europe this season, it's not like he's not going to get game time, even if Ange does, say, prefer Brennan Johnson on the right, Son on the left and Solanke up top. And even if it is James Maddison sort of in that 10 attacking role. So, yeah, it's really good to see him develop and look like, and I know it's only pre-season, but look like a better season now than he was better player now than he was last season.
It's like kind of that progression. And obviously that link-up play as well, Luke, with Bergwall. I think was it the last goal Kulesevski scored in the last pre-season? It kind of shows as well that those youth players are coming through. What have you kind of made of Bergwall as well?
Yes, quickly on Kulesevski, I get what you're saying, Mitch, and I wouldn't disagree in that sense, regarding Solanke and whatnot. But if we went into a season we had Kulesevski playing through the middle, I'd be pretty concerned as a fan, going into that. But to be honest, I was concerned about Solanke until I realised that it's a player that Ange wants, and so therefore I'm willing to kind of give it that because you've got to give the guy what he wants. But I think Bergwall's been absolutely outstanding, and without kind of going too much into detail, like I would be playing him over James Maddison against Leicester without a shadow of a doubt, because my issue with James Maddison at the moment is that I had some worries about him coming into Spurs when he first came in. And in the first 10 games of last season, he completely changed my mind. And I was like, do you know what? Like, I got it completely wrong. ever since he's come back, we've allowed it for injuries and whatnot, and we've allowed that kind of dip in form, but he just doesn't seem to be the same player, is my concern. Don't know if it's what it is, but he just seems to have lost that kind of fight for me. He seems to spend a lot more time trying to get people booked and doing other stuff, and he really hasn't been that influential. But if you look at someone like Bergvall, he's got the strength of a player 3 times his size, and he's got like amazing feet. And I just think, why would you not? The whole point in preseason is to give players a chance to try and prove themselves that they can be in the team. And I don't think he's done anything that would suggest that he shouldn't be.
No, and it's a great point as well. And I think, again, it's that kind of competition for place, because I think Bergvall has been an absolute unit when you've seen him play. And again, he's linked up brilliantly with the current players we have. I mean, talking a bit about redemption, Billy, and that is about Jed Spence, because I think he's been class during preseason as well. It's kind of like he's come back to Spurs and he wants to prove himself.
Yeah, definitely. I think he maybe struggled a little bit at left back at the weekend, but it's a really tricky test against Bayern Munich, which I completely back up what Luke was saying at the beginning. By the way, I don't think we really should have played Bayern Munich twice in preseason. I don't think we really got a lot from it, to be honest. But yeah, it was a difficult test for him, but I think he's been really, really impressive. And I think the good thing about it is it saves us a signing as well. We don't have to go and sign another right back now. And we maybe even don't have to sign a left back either, but I'm not sure about that one. It might be something we look to do a little bit later on. But the fact that he can play both sides, he's English, he's really quick, a really good dribble of the ball. It's a real big bonus. One of the biggest bonuses of preseason, I would say.
And I know, obviously, you just mentioned, potentially signing some new players. I'm just going to come straight in with it. And obviously, Ange has spoken about potentially getting another winger. Obviously, I think all of us kind of want Eze. I don't know whether that's going to happen. But in your eyes, Billy, who do you think should walk kind of through the door in that winger position?
Do you know what? I was really gutted that it was not Neto. I think Neto, if you discount the injuries, would be the perfect kind of winger that we want. And there's not a lot out there for the right wingers, the kind of right wingers that we want anyway, that would be able to take on a man like Neto can. I think the only 2 names that I can really think of is like Kubo and Bakayoko or PSV. I don't really know that many other right wingers that will come in and improve us that we can maybe get. But I think not getting Neto is a big blow for us, to be honest. And if we do, I really obviously want to sign Eze, but I don't think he'll come in as a right winger. I think he'll come in more of to play in the midfield 3 rather than the front 3. So I think losing that on Neto is a bit of a blow for us, to be honest.
It is going to be a struggle. I mean, coming to you, Luke, are you kind of in the same kind of area in terms of you want Eze, but is he going to become that winger that Ange kind of wants? Who do you think will come in?
Who do I think will come in? I've literally zero ideas. Like I have no idea who will come in. In terms of Eze, like I don't rate him as highly as I would rate him, as a winger, as I would rate him as a number 10 or roaming player in the middle. The issue with that is though, we're absolutely stacked in midfield. Like if you look at Archie Gray, like he's designed as a central midfielder. We've obviously got Bissouma, Bentancur, Skip, Bergvall, Maddison. Like if you buy an Eze, who's you want predominantly to play through the middle, like I think it's just a bit of a waste of money, because if you're going to play him on the wing, I don't think you get the best out of someone like Eze, in my opinion. I really don't know. Like I would be really up for like Brian Mbeumo from Brentford. Like I think he would be a really good sign. I don't think it would cost a huge sum of money. Doesn't look like they're going to sell Ivan Toney unless something happens potentially. But that's who I would go for, because that they can play in the Premier League. But apart from that, I kind of have to agree with Billy. Unfortunately, Bakayoko has said this week that he only wants to play Champions League football. And if we go on what Ange has previously said about he only wants players that want to play for the side and not just because of playing Champions League football, it kind of like doesn't balance each other out. So I don't even know if we're going to get a winger, to be honest. I hope we do, and I hope there's more business done. But it's not. I don't know who you choose.
And I think that's the thing. The market's so slim at the moment, Mitch, for kind of who we want. Is that kind of your kind of thought as well?
Yeah, definitely. I'm like the others. I'm not really sold on anyone. I think personally that we should sign Eze, just because out of all the players that Luke mentioned, he's the one that I would rather have in there as that Roman player and as that attacker. So from that sense, I would still like to see us bring him in. Whether we do or not is a different question. But in terms of wingers, Hollie, I genuinely have no idea. It's very similar to sort of the striker market at the moment in terms of there's not necessarily loads of people out there. I mean, Twitter's Twitter, and Twitter will do what Twitter does, but I've seen people asking for like Jadon Sancho, or people saying that we should bring Madueke in from Chelsea and stuff like that. And I just think when you've got people saying that, that's how you know there's not really anyone about that is necessarily going to improve us in that area. I don't think either of those players are better than what we've got already. So it's a very difficult one. However, I think Ange is very, very good at profiling the type of player that has the exact attributes that he wants. So it could well be that a name does just pop up out of nowhere that maybe we're not all too familiar with, or maybe it's just someone that we haven't necessarily considered too much. And if that's the case, then so be it. I'd be all for it. But we are running out of time to start getting deals done. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's the only kind of worrying factor at the moment is who it's going to be and if we're going to have time to kind of get it over the line. But Billy, obviously we have got a player over the line. We touched on it earlier, and that is Solanke. How are you kind of feeling on that signing being done?
Yeah, do you know what? At the beginning, I was a little bit underwhelmed when I first heard the links. Then I did a bit of research and I listened to a couple of YouTube videos. I watched a couple of videos about him, how he would fit Ange ball really well. And then I've been really impressed with. I really like his personality as a player as well. I think he seems like a really good guy. He seems like exactly the kind of character that Ange looks for as well, which I think is really important. As Luke just mentioned, Ange always talks about how he only wants players that want to come to the club. And it sounded like he was like desperate to join us. Obviously scored 19 goals for Bournemouth, which is pretty impressive. And at the beginning, I was sort of thinking, he's had one really good Prem season and not any more than that. But then, sometimes players peak at different ages. He might just be sort of reaching the level that he's at now, and he might have just improved a lot. So I've since U-turned, and I'm now really on board with the signing. I'm buzzing for it, to be honest. I think he's going to score a lot of goals for us. So we saw a compilation of his 19 goals, and it looks like it's going to be a really good fit.
No, and I think that's the thing, because obviously I think when you hear the name Solanke, okay, he's from Bournemouth, but when you look at the stats, yes, he had a great season last season. It's just whether he can kind of keep it up. But Luke, for me, it's more the fact that I feel like this move to Tottenham not only helps Tottenham, but I think it helps him as well, in a sense that he needs to come and prove himself. And I think he's kind of got the attitude to do that. What's your kind of thoughts on the signing?
Yeah, like I echo exactly what Billy said. Like I was not really that excited for it. I'm never ever going to be against the signing, but I was not really like that keen on it. The more I look into it and the more I see that, Ange really wanted him, and, whatever profiles he wants to look at in terms of signings, like coming from him, that's what he wants. He even mentioned about him starting against Leicester and said, when he's had games in pre-season, like all he's got to do is kind of meet up with us and fit in with what we do. And so I'm getting more and more excited kind of by the day about it. And like, as you say, he has got something to prove. Like he was let go at Chelsea and Liverpool. And like now, as Billy said, like players peak at different ages. Like this could now be like his time. And this could now be his time to be able to really show that he's a world beater of a player. People are saying, oh, he's only got one England cap or, whatever it is. And you're looking at it and saying, well, look at kind of Harry Kane when he was going through all his loans that he did. And, we're always going to like compare the two. But I think that you're allowed to, have your time at a certain age. And this could now be his time. Look, we could be sitting here in 6 months' time and saying this is just another Richarlison. We need to start again. But the market was so slim for strikers. If this is the one that Ange Postecoglou wants, then we need to go for it. Because how many times have we talked about we need to back the manager? We need to get the players that the manager wants. Like Antonio Conte didn't want this player. Jose Mourinho didn't want this player. Well, now we're hearing that the manager wants them, and we're still not happy with who it is.
No, correct. I think I've kind of learned, obviously Twitter's not the best place to kind of get all your knowledge, but I've kind of learned we're never happy as Spurs fans. I think that's just the way it kind of rolls. But Mitch, saying that, obviously, I think what we're kind of all talking about for Ange having this type of player, we know that Solanke's good at pressing the ball. Do you think that's probably one of the main attributes to why he signed, or do you think it's as well because obviously he's good in front of goal?
I think his positioning as well is probably a big factor. I'm sure most people have watched the 8-minute video of all of his goals from last season that have done the rounds. And it just, for me, having a look at it, and then if you go and watch any Tottenham game and look at how we play and where the majority of our chances come from, which is from either of those wings and the ball coming into the box, Solanke is in that position where 9 times out of 10 is where the ball falls. So in a goal scoring sense as well, I think he's a very, very smart addition. But yeah, the great thing about him as a striker is he will work off the ball as well as on the ball. You know, like it's very good because even getting in the right positions, he can play with his back to goal as well. So it means the runners can get beyond him in that sense as well. You know, you think about Richarlison playing in that role last season, and every time the ball gets fired into him, it might end up just rocketing off his boot and not really working. Whereas with Solanke, that's hopefully not going to be the case. But yeah, with the pressing as well, it's excellent because we know that Ange likes to win that ball high up. He knows he likes to be aggressive with that style of play. So yeah, combine that with the positioning and the other attributes he has as just a poacher and a number 9 is it's all positive, really. I think he's going to be a very, very good signing for us.
No, I'm very excited as well. And like Billy mentioned earlier, obviously his attitude as well. I think that's a big factor in an Ange side, having the dressing room kind of on the same kind of page all the time, which I'm looking forward to be honest, this season. Obviously, I'm also looking forward to, Billy, the fact that obviously Mikey Moore has been given his professional contract today. What a way to kind of wake yourself up on a Monday morning, eh?
Yeah, brilliant news. And when you mentioned earlier about Kulesevski, I think he's probably, along with Archie Graham-Bergwall, been one of the other stars of pre-season. He's looked really good. I think he even looked really good against Bayern Munich, which is obviously probably the biggest game that he's played so far in pre-season. Yeah, it's just really, really exciting. And obviously the club have made quite a big deal of it because he's going to be a future star, and the content around it was really good. And it's interesting, and I'm definitely guilty of it myself, thinking we need to go and sign a right winger. But, is there a world where we just go, let's just give this guy a go this season, let's just do it and see what happens? Because I wouldn't be surprised if he's ready. I think he's ready for it,
No, and I think that's the thing. We see other big clubs do it. So why can't we, Luke? Why can't we chuck a player in that that's kind of proved it in pre-season? He's got that professional contract. Give him a whirl. Yeah,
100%. And, I'm quite guilty of not watching a lot of the full pre-season games because I've had so much on recently. But I heard a lot of people talking about him and seen him play a little bit. But it wasn't until I really sat down this weekend and sat and watched the Bayern Munich game and saw when he came on, like how confident he was. Even just like a little flick around the corner and then run, you could see that he had pace. Even when he was squaring up to Kingsley Coman, towards the end of that game, like, okay, some things you don't want to see from a player, but at the time, what was he, 16 at the time, 17 yesterday. And, to see him kind of up against a player who he's obviously watched like growing up and like not being afraid to stand his ground. And I agree with Billy. I think that, he's got really, really good pace and he could be somebody that you look to and say, do you know what, you come on, late on in the game and do something and change it. And it looks like Ange has a lot of faith in him as well. And, we have heard a lot before Ange came to Spurs that he would, promote youth players as well, but we didn't see a lot of it last season. But I feel that we've seen a lot more in pre-season than we've done from previous managers as well. And I don't see why not. Like if you look at someone like Brennan Johnson, who has good pace but doesn't always, kind of provide as much as he should, then why not? If you need to change a game, say, do you know what? Come on, have no pressure, do what you want, and see what happens.
And I think that's the thing. I think it's the great thing to have, especially a player with that much confidence at his young age. It's a good time now to kind of embed him in. And I think Mitch as well, obviously with all the competitions we've got next season, he's definitely going to get on the pitch, surely.
Oh, 100%. I think a lot of the academy players are. I think there are a good few who are ready. And I would imagine that Ange's thinking behind it and the reason perhaps why we've seen a lot more of those academy players in pre-season is obviously because a few were off doing their bits for their international teams during the summer. But I think what I have interpreted from a lot of Ange's press conferences over the last month or so is that we're going to be a lot better prepared for the season this time round. He's now had that year in charge, and I do think he's perhaps spent that first year in charge focusing more on the first team and getting out of those players what he wants. And now that he is perhaps familiar with what everyone can do and the players are more familiar with him and what they want, what he wants them to do, he can now put a little bit more of an emphasis on those academy players and on those young guns that he wants to bring through, which is, why so many minutes have been given to the likes of Moore and Will Lancashire and Alfie Devine. I'd say perhaps those three are the three that are most likely to get minutes this season. I mean, I can't remember who it was I was speaking to and a few weeks ago, but they asked me if I remembered Alfie Devine's performance against, I think it was against Marine in the FA Cup, and that was a good few years ago now. So, you've still got players like him lurking about. Like, if he's not going to get his chance this season, when is he going to get it? Because he's been there with someone like Mikey Moore. It's a bit different. He's just signed his contract. I don't think it's been confirmed, but I think it's a 3-year contract with the club. So it's not a massively long one. So you'd perhaps suggest that implies that Ange will have to give him minutes sooner rather than later. Otherwise, he'll be thinking about his future, because we know the types of clubs that were interested in trying to take him away from us. And perhaps it'll be the same with Will Lancashire as well. I think I hope we see a dynamic this season where, of course, we've got Solanke as our main striker, and then you've got a battle between perhaps Will Lancashire and Richarlison to perhaps be that understudy and get those minutes off the bench that we will need across the season. Like, for example, who is going to start those early Europa League games? Is it going to be Richarlison, or is it going to be the younger players like Lancashire and like Moore and like Devine? So I feel like there's a good battle. And as always with academy players, they will feel like they have something to prove against these established first team players. So hopefully we're going to see a lot more of all of them. But Mikey Moore in particular, we definitely will in the Premier League as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, preach it. And I'm glad you mentioned Will, because obviously, Billy, in the Bayern Munich game, there's kind of like a sliding door moment where Will was coming on and Harry Kane was coming on, and you sat there and you thought, wow, is this the future and the past sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously similar stuff happened with Kane and Defoe back in the day. And I think I really like the bit in the preseason where I think Mikey Moore got tackled by Paulinho, and then Will Lancashire went and take him down straight away. Like, these kids are really fearless. Like, it just seems to, because they've basically come from a season where they pretty much won every game. Like, they dominated the league and they won the cup. And they're just fearless, and I think it's definitely the best crop of youngsters we've had since I've been, since I've been a fan, probably. Like, it's the most exciting group of youngsters coming through. And I think him and as I just mentioned, I think he will be pushing Richarlison and Solanke all the way, and he might come on, get the odd appearances here and there, and then when the Europa comes along, he might even get a couple of starts. But yeah, it's definitely someone I would like to keep around rather than loan out. And I think him and Moore and Bergvall and Gray will all be pushing the first team as the season goes on.
It's such a great dynamic, because to have all these youngsters and these players that are coming through fighting for those positions, it's just kind of a breath of fresh air. And I think also the biggest thing, Luke, as well, that the fact that the whole kind of club are playing under this one philosophy rather than having Conte in and having more of a progressive manager in the under-21s, you're kind of all playing the same kind of free-flowing football.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the way it should be, right? the under-21 should be playing the exact same way that the first team's playing, because when it comes to their chance, they need to be clued up and they need to be ready for for anything that comes their way. And I don't disagree with what everyone's saying. I think that it was probably clever from Mikey Moore's family or whoever involved in that contract negotiation to do a 3-year contract, because it says to Spurs, it says, look, you've got him now until he's 19, 20. Now is your time to do something, because if it doesn't happen, he will just leave and and go to a club where he is appreciated. And so, and not to just suggest that we don't appreciate him, but do you know what I mean? Like, we see so many youngsters that everybody believes is good enough and they're ready to come in, and then they go out for some reason at Spurs. And now is the time for us to say, now we have real talented players. My only concern is that there's been rumours that Lancashire might go on loan, but I'm not sure how true those are or not. So in a way, you hope he doesn't, because you really want to see one of these youngsters come in, but then it looks like a bit of a shame on the likes of Dane Scarlett, for example, who has never really got a sniff, even though he's had such a high potential ceiling. So maybe that has something to do with his progression. And same a little bit with Alfie Devine. Again, as Mitch said about the Marine game and whatnot, you haven't really seen too much of him. I can't remember too much preseason that he's done, and I've been kind of blown away by it, which is maybe harsh from what I'm saying. But the other two that we are talking about have come in and have shown that they are capable. But I did love that Lancashire and Kane moment. It was nice. It was nice of Kane to lean over and shake his hand or whatever. And I thought it was pretty class. He was, he was class all afternoon. I think Harry Kane.
Yeah, you can tell he's still Tottenham through and through, bless him. But it was just a really cool sliding door moment, I thought. But obviously, I'm going to move on a little bit, Mitch, because obviously there was rumours, well, not rumours, it was facts, that Bissouma's been a little bit of a naughty boy. And the most annoying thing is how close it is to the opening kind of day of the season, so to speak. So what do you kind of make of the actions that he's kind of done?
It's a very, very poor lack of judgment from him. My stance on that sort of thing is no professional footballer should really be doing that, should they? Just because for so many reasons, really. Firstly, of course, because it's illegal, whether it was only made illegal last year or not, like that is what it is at the end of the day. Of course, like the impacts it can have, and that's probably the main thing for me. When you consider that an athlete at the level Bissouma is playing at is expected to be in peak condition across his entire body, the things that laughing gas can do, particularly to your brain and stuff, is not it's not very good to see. And I know that he acknowledged it very quickly and apologized straight away for it, but I don't think Ange will be very impressed with that happening, especially because the media have picked up on it. When you've got BBC Sport writing an article on it, it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world. So I think for me, he will probably sit on the bench for the first couple of weeks of the season. Luckily, the good thing is we probably have the players that can fill in, and arguably should be starting ahead of him perhaps anyway. But it's just silly, isn't it, really? Even if it is on your private Snapchat that you're only supposed to have your close friends on or whatnot. It's just, I don't know what he expected out of it, really. It's, no one's going to sit there and think, oh, yeah, that's Yves Bissouma. That's really cool him doing that, are they? Like, it's only going to be a negative reaction. So, yeah, just a strange one for me.
It's just a bit of a silly egg, to be honest. I think it's just, okay, yeah, it's illegal. It's just the timing of it as well. And like you say, if I'm not condoning it, but if you're going to do it, you're not going to show everyone. I think that's the biggest thing as well, especially in the kind of position that he's in. And Billy, I wasn't going to mention Emerson. I'm going to kind of phrase it in another way, in a sense of, are you kind of pleased, bar that one player, of the players that have kind of left in this transfer window?
Yeah, because I think that's been a big problem that we've had over the last few years. We're really bad at selling players. I know when we had a lot of loans happen recently, but it's good to get these players out the door. I joke about Emerson, but I think it's definitely time to move on. And a lot of the players that we've sort of struggled to get rid of recently, we've got Ndombele gone permanently. I think there's probably only a couple left to sell now. We've probably got maybe Lo Celso will probably be sold, I'm guessing. And I can't think of too many others off the top of my head that are still. Region, I know, has been strongly linked to Barcelona now as well. So, yeah, it's been a really, really good part of the window, getting rid of these players. And now I'd like to see a couple more come in, because I think we're still a little bit short, maybe, especially because we've sold a lot more players than we bought.
And it's true what you say. I think it is the hardest thing for us to try and kind of get rid of players. I'm not saying that we're sentimental, but Luke, it's almost like we don't want to sell a player less than what we bought them for. I think the biggest thing for me was obviously ripping up the Ndombele's kind of contract. That kind of told to me, right, we're actually deciding to move on now, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because that, from that side of the fan base, like, that doesn't get mentioned. That doesn't get mentioned, the fact that, we've just decided that this is enough. We're going to rip it up. What the judgment that we made on this player was poor, and we'll move on to bigger things. But what it does show is that they are, and again, I will say it, like, backing the manager in terms of, like, these are the players he wants in. This is the group of core players that he wants to work with. And if you want him to try and succeed, then, this is what you need to do. I think that our transfer business externally, as in getting rid of players, has been excellent. I think that we haven't tried to, bar Emerson Royale, where we seem to kind of haggle for the longest period of time over a few million quid. I think the players that we've got out, even towards the end of last season, I think has been excellent, even starting with the likes of Hugo Lloris, Eric Dyer, Perisic, and Ndombele, Emerson, the list goes on. Højbjerg, the list goes on. And I just think that they are really showing now that this is what they want. I just hope that Ange is allowed to, keep building on what he has done and has got, because it's not going to happen overnight. This season, it's probably not going to happen. but we need to give him time. We need to give him the tools and keep building, just like the other team have done, with their manager. And something special could happen at this club. I do believe that.
I'm kind of glad that you kind of alluded to obviously this season, because Mitch, obviously we've spoken about players coming out. Hopefully there's going to be another player that kind of comes in. But what's your kind of hopes and kind of, I say hopes, but more of your realistic thoughts on how the season's going to go?
It's a very difficult one. I think the league is going to be incredibly competitive this season. We know that Arsenal and City are probably going to be the benchmark again. With Liverpool, I actually think Liverpool are going to surprise a lot of people this season. Arne Slot seems to have really settled in quickly there, and in pre-season they've looked excellent. I think they've already beaten United and Arsenal in pre-season, so I know it obviously doesn't mean too much in that sense, but you still have to be a half-decent side to beat any Arsenal team in particular. So, you've got those three who very likely going to take up 3 of the top 4 spots. But then you've obviously got ourselves. Man United have brought in some good players. Chelsea, we know, are spending £400 trillion on players again this summer. Newcastle look like they're going to get the Gehi deal over the line. West Ham have, in my opinion, recruited fantastically this summer as well. Aston Villa have done well to replace the likes of Douglas Luiz with Onana. So, you've got another 4 or 5 teams there that are all going to fancy themselves to get in and around that top 4 spot. So the league's going to be incredibly competitive this season. I think where our fortunes will lie will be in those cup competitions. Hopefully in the Europa League, that's the one I want us to really, really go for. I think a lot of people probably in agreement with that. I think we are now all at the desperate stage where we take maybe finishing 8th place if it meant we won something, anything, whatever it may be. So hopefully we get kinder draws this season than we did last season, particularly in the FA Cup. Obviously getting City in that 4th round of the FA Cup was a bit of a killer for us. And then hopefully Ange has learned his lesson from the Carabao Cup game against Fulham as well, and fielding not the strongest team. But yeah, there's hope. There's hope, Hollie. I can feel it. I can feel it in the air. Something's happening this season.
Definitely. Like I say, it's definitely going to be more competitive, I feel, which is for good or for worse. I'm not too sure at the moment. But Luke, what's your kind of realistic kind of hopes / dreams for the next season?
I don't know. Last season I said we'd finish 5th. And so I kind of want to get another bold prediction, to be honest. So I'd love us to finish 4th or 3rd. I'd really like that. My only concern is, and I'm like one of the biggest Ange lovers as well, my only concern is still, it's, without going too technical, it's, so when we go into attacking phases and the fullbacks go inverted, there doesn't seem to ever be any cover. And in my head, like when you're creating a tactic like this, there has to be cover. So when someone goes from their position, there has to be somebody that says, oh, okay, if we lose possession now, I need to retreat and get back into that. And my concern is that I honestly believe if Ange did the same tactic but played with 3 centre-backs instead of 2, we would come 2nd or 1st. I genuinely believe that we could win the league with that style of play, because I believe it's aggressive in an attacking sense. The only problem is it's sometimes kamikaze in a defensive sense. And I need to figure out, and I still haven't seen from watching Spurs, where that defensive element comes in. Sometimes you see it's Bissouma who comes and tries to cover, or that defensive midfielder, but it's so laboured. I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. So yeah, I want to see kind of a little bit less naivety when it comes to that, and I haven't yet seen that from Ange, and that's my only worry, is that where does that come in, because we're still going to concede goals.
No, I'm with you. And if Mickey Van de Ven's hamstrings go again, then we definitely ain't going to have someone to be able to cover and run back. But Billy, before you go, because I know you need to leave shortly, what's your kind of hopes and realistic dreams for obviously next season? Is there a trophy inbound?
That's all I want is a trophy. I think our best shot at winning the trophy is definitely the Europa League, because you don't have to beat Man City, you don't have to beat Liverpool, you don't have to beat Arsenal in the Europa League. Which is, they make winning a domestic cup in England really, really difficult, especially for us. We never seem to be able to pull it together in those big games against one of those sides in the semi-final, say. I think that, as Mitch said, I think the league's going to be really challenging this year. And I don't know if we're going to have enough to do it by playing 2 games a week, because we struggled with 1 game a week last season. We haven't improved the squad that much that it's going to be, suddenly a completely different season. And I think Newcastle have got no Europe. Chelsea have got, 3 squads worth of players. It's going to be really, really competitive. But I really, if it was up to me, I would prioritise the Europa League. And I think we've got a really good chance of winning it, because the field is not that, nowhere near as strong as like the Champions League, say, and the Champions League drop-offs don't happen this year. So it's a big chance for us, I think. Chance.
Definitely. And I say any trophy for me, I'll take it. But Billy, it's been amazing to have you on tonight. Let everybody know where they can find you before you go.
Just Billie T on Twitter, and thank you guys. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm maybe really excited for the season. So looking forward to it, guys. I'll see you guys soon.
See you later, Billy. Thank you. Billy. Thank you, Billy, for joining. Make sure you go check out Billy as well on Twitter. But we're going to move on, guys, because obviously our game is obviously this time kind of next week. So I'm going to come to you first, Luke. How are you kind of feeling? I'm going to call it the Winksy Derby to play Leicester away.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to have the Premier League back. I'm excited to have Spurs back. I don't have any concerns over this first game of the season. I remember, for a few seasons, Liverpool had the promoted side every single time that the league would start, and then they would always moan if they lost, about, it's not that easy to play effectively we're playing a championship side. They've just lost their manager as well. So I don't see it being a big problem. It's only a problem if you make it one. The only concern could be, how quickly does Dominic Solanke fit into this side? But I think he has all the attributes to play a very similar role that Harry Kane played, in terms of, Mitch said earlier, holding the ball up, playing the ball off, being able to get into the box. He's obviously quicker than him. Get into the box, score goals. So if he can get, an early goal in this game, I can really see us kind of running away with it. So just hope that that's the Spurs that we see. We start aggressive and everybody plays as well as they can do. And I don't see us losing.
I can't hack it if Harry Winks beats us. But Mitch, how do you kind of see it going down? Are you kind of in the same kind of boat as Luke? Do you think it's going to be difficult? Obviously, away up to Leicester.
Yeah, I am, but I'll play the slightly more pessimistic role for the sake of having both sides of the argument. I think if we were playing Leicester away in 2 months' time, I would be much more confident than I am playing them first game of the season on a Monday night under the lights on Sky Sports. When perhaps the players aren't going to be fully up to the speed of the Premier League just yet, because regardless of how many preseason games you do play, it does still take a couple of Premier League games to really get back to that level. I do think we'll win. Just to put that on record, I do think we have obviously a much better squad than them, and Luke's very right in what he says. They have lost their manager, however, they have brought in a decent enough manager in Steve Cooper, and they haven't necessarily recruited well, but they've also lost one of their best players from last season in Dewsbury Hall as well. So they're definitely not as much of a threat as perhaps they could be, but I'm always wary of going on record, especially as a Tottenham fan, and saying we're going to completely blow a team away, because I wish it was that easy. However, I do think we'll win. I do think Solanke will start in that game as well. I think Ange has pretty much hinted that there shouldn't be any issues with him playing. And let's just hope that it's a nice, comfortable win for us all to start the season off. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Nice Monday night, watch along, really comfortable, like a 3-0 win at the KP, clappers flying onto the pitch because they're all so angry. That would be nice.
That would be good.
If you go on record enough by saying enough positive things, people stop caring after a while. So then,
yeah, true. That's true.
That is very true. I like that kind of Uno reverso. It's quite a good league. But obviously, we said about probably Solanke's going to start. I hope he does start, because it'd be great to get him the ground kind of running with him. But Luke, who else do you think is going to fit in the side? Do you think Decky, after the amazing pre-seasons he's had, is going to be that player that's going to start in the middle, or do you think Ange is going to play him out wide? How do you kind of see that kind of dynamic going down?
Yeah, I really don't know when it comes to Decky, really. I do really like him. The only bit that still frustrates me about him is even though he scored in the first minute of the game, when the ball gets played into him sometimes, I feel like he's a little bit legs all go everywhere and he just struggles to kind of get that first touch sometimes. I can see obviously the front three probably being something like Son, Solanke, I'm going to say Johnson, but it could be Kulesevski. I think he'll play Maddison in behind. I probably, as I said earlier, wish he would play Bergvall in behind, because what's the point in pre-season if you're not going to give players that are playing the best the minutes? And then I wouldn't go too dissimilar from last season. We'd probably see the likes. I would have said Bentancur and Bissouma, but now obviously with what's happened, probably or maybe like Bissouma and Sarr, but it'd probably be Sarr and Bentancur, I would imagine. And then Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Udogi and Vicario. I nearly forgot all our players then.
I think
the only difference is probably going to be Solanke. I should have just said that was a big quicker, wouldn't it?
I was trying to work it out in my head as you were saying it, but I think we're all kind of under the agreement that probably the keeper and the back four are going to probably be the same. Yeah. And then from there, I mean, Mitch, are you kind of under the impression that Decky's going to play for the middle? Is he going to play out wide? How do you kind of see that midfield dynamic? Because I think that's the only thing that sometimes gives me a bit of a headache of working out who's going to play in that midfield.
I think, based on the way he's played in pre-season, I think Kulesevski will start, but he will start on the right-hand side, and it will be a front three of Son, Solanke, and Kulesevski. I think he's clearly done a lot of work over the summer, and I think it would maybe benefit us a bit more to play him in that winger, even if it is maybe not his strongest position. And Brennan Johnson off the bench isn't necessarily, it's not a bad option to have, is it? And do you know what? I actually think in midfield that we might see one of Gray or Bergvall start. I'm more inclined to say perhaps Archie Gray might start, because I agree with what Luke said in the sense that I can't see James Maddison being dropped, especially against Leicester, of course, in their first game back since first time he's playing them since he left them. So I can see alongside Solanke perhaps Archie Gray being the other new player that comes into the team. But yeah, like you said, goalkeeper and back four will be the same. Obviously, Ange just said that he wants to play Son on the left, so that's where he'll play. Got three choices to pick from technically as a striker now, which is always good to see. Finally, that he's got variety there, and yeah, that right wing role is perhaps the tricky one, and then in midfield as well, because it just depends on what dynamic he wants really. Because whereas we are stacked in midfield now, it depends how you want to sort of go for it with a team. When you're playing a team like Leicester, who perhaps, no disrespect to them, will be one of the weaker teams in the division, do you want to go a bit more attacking with it? Could you play maybe Lucas Bergvall in there with Maddison just a bit behind him to have a bit more going forward? It really depends what Ange wants to do, but at the same time that we may not have a clue, I'm really excited to see what he does go for, and it will ultimately be a sign of who he trusts already and if he does trust Bergvall and Archie Gray already, that is a testament to them and how well they've done in pre-season and how much they've impressed him since joining the club. So yeah, we'll see.
It's going to be exciting. I always say it's nice to kind of have that headache in the midfield. I'm kind of glad I don't have it. And Ange has kind of got it to kind of dissect who's going to play in that midfield, who's going to work well. But I think it's going to be an interesting game. Like I totally even forgot that Maddison came from Leicester. So it's going to be obviously the Winks versus kind of Maddison kind of game. So it's going to be an exciting one, to say the least. But I want to say a big thank you to both of you and Billie for joining me tonight. And thank you to everybody else that's kind of watching. We'll go around the table and say our kind of goodbyes because it's too bloody hot to talk anymore. So Luke, I'll let you go first. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Holly, and make sure everyone's clicking that subscribe button and tune in every week, because these shows are quality, so it's really good to be back on. If you want to catch me every Sunday, Part Lane Podcast at 7 p.m. on YouTube, but we're starting a new show on Wednesday this week. Don't know what day it'll be the rest of the week, but this week 9 o'clock, it's called FPL Extra Time, where my colleague Dave will be hosting with a few of his pals to talk everything FPL. So if you want to check into that. Also, if you want to, without plugging myself too much, join our FPL league. It's free to enter, and there are prizes as well, football shirts, money, vouchers and stuff like that. So go in and enter, and you could win something.
Lovely stuff. I still need to do that, so I need to do that after I come off here. So no, thanks again, Luke, for joining us, and Mitch as well. Appreciate it too. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've been on the show, so it's nice to get back on, and obviously with brilliant guests in Billie and Luke as well. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am over on Twitter, but I am now over on YouTube, putting a lot of work in over there. to have regular content up on my channel across the season. It's been really brilliant so far. I've only been doing it for 2 or 3 weeks, but we are very quickly closing in on 1,000 subs over there. So if anybody fancies subscribing to the channel to help me out, it would be brilliant. But obviously subscribe to Hollie's channel first, because the shows are brilliant every week, like Luke has said. So but no, appreciate it, Hollie. So thank you very much for having me on, and let's hope we can start the season very strongly. A week's time already. I can't believe it. 1 week until the league starts for us. Insane.
It's so good. But no, make sure you go follow these guys as well. Like I say, it's amazing that it's great to just talk about football, especially Tottenham, because that's all I know. So make sure you go check out everybody's kind of channel. Obviously, me and Wes will be back on Wednesday for the Hotspur Huddle. Wes will probably get his tactics board out again, because he can do it a lot better than I can in terms of where people might play, etc., etc. So make sure you tune in for that one. Like Luke, we're also doing an FPL. It won't be as intense as Luke's. Luke's show will be able to give you tips. I will just say who's winning and who's losing. So make sure you go and check both Luke's FPL out and also mine when you get the chance. And as you can tell, it's been a little while since I've done this. But I'll see you on Wednesday, and see you maybe for a watch long on Monday, depending on whether I can kind of control myself with my language. But until next time, come on, you Spurs.